And hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge, back once again with another instalment of my Ultimate New 52 Reading Guide video series. To provide a bit of background here, I have over the last few years read the entire DC New 52. There's 3,646 issues, yes, really. I've used that read through to create the internet's most comprehensive reading guide for the DC New 52, bar none, and that's what I'll be showing you here. That guide takes the form of a map, as you can see here, which I've created myself from my first-hand experience and knowledge of reading every single issue from this era of comics. This series is a careful, exhaustive, step-by-step walkthrough of each section of this map, and today's video is video 2.1, Justice League and Suicide Squad. Before we go any further, I would stress that even if you think you know what the New 52 is, or even if you only want to read one specific character or series in the New 52, like Batman for example, you still need to watch the introduction video to this series. Video 0.0. That video will contain a lot of the broad concepts and principles that underlie the design of this guide, and I'm not going to be re-explaining these points here as I come across them. So if you're watching this video and see that I mention things in passing like the convergence line, type J readers, or volumes with big and little V's, and you find it all a bit impenetrable, you need to go back and watch the introduction video, and I'll put the link to that in the description below. So now, with no further ado, here is the Ultimate New 52 Reading Guide. And what I'm going to do is just zoom in appropriately. You'll see there on the right are the Justice League issues, here in these little orange circles. And today's episode is episode 2.1, Justice League and Suicide Squad. Now, you're probably wondering why I've combined these two families of comics into the same part of the map here, instead of splitting them out. Well, there's two reasons. Firstly, the Suicide Squad is a bit of an anomaly. And secondly, and more importantly, these two sets of characters are quite closely linked in DC's Rebirth era. As such, I figured it made sense to link them here too. So, before we go any further, what are the things you need to know before you start reading the series? Well, nothing specific beyond pop culture knowledge, to be honest. For example, Superman is from Krypton. That sort of stuff. Most of the other stuff you can ignore or works well enough without any added context. As always, if you find something confusing or want to know more about something that intrigues you, tweet me, or Wikipedia is your best friend. Now, as I said, here are all the Justice League issues, orange circles, and what we're going to be doing is covering the main threads today, the core series, Justice League. So it starts here with this particular trade collection. Now, this was published from 2011 to 2016, and it's also referred to as Justice League Volume 2. That's volume with a big V. It was later replaced by the next volume with a big V in DC Rebirth. Now, it was written for its entire run by the amazing Jeff Johns, and the series is one that pinned together major universe-wide events for the whole New 52, such as Forever Evil, which I'll discuss in a second. And so, ideally, this is your starting point on the New 52 universe. I should point out, it's not the first New 52 stuff I read, and by no means do you have to start here, but with the benefit of hindsight, that's my recommendation. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the individual trade collections in their separate volumes, and remember we're talking volumes with a small v, and we're going to go through them one by one. So the one you can see here on the left is where you should start. The first thing to read is called Volume 1 Origin. This trade collection contains issues 1 to 6 and serves as an excellent introduction to the League. It depicts their first adventure together, and the formation of the League itself is actually one of the earliest stories in the New 52 universe, chronologically speaking. So kind of like a prequel to the world that follows. It's also been made into a feature-length animated DC movie called Justice League War. Imagine the live-action Justice League movie, but actually being quite good. So next is Volume 2, Villain's Journey. This is set in the proper era of the New 52, so 5 years after the events of Volume 1. It collects issues 7 to 12 and the epilogue from issue 0, and is a good read, basically. If you're interested in collecting it in an oversized format, both this and Volume 1 form Absolute Justice League Origin, which is available to buy in the absolute size sort of prestige format. It's a little bit of an odd choice in terms of linking two unrelated stories for one absolute, but all 12 issues are drawn by Jim Lee, so I guess that's the unifying theme. It has recently been solicited as a deluxe hardcover of those 12 issues as well, so that's enough options in terms of picking up these first two volumes, but I'll discuss formats again later on in this video. So that's Volume 1, that's Volume 2, and then we have Volume 3. So volume 3 is called Throne of Atlantis, which represents the first real tie-in event we come across in the New 52. Don't worry, this tie-in is quite small and self-contained, only spanning Justice League here, and then some Aquaman issues. To that end, this volume collects issues 13 to 17 of Justice League and issue 15 to 16 of Aquaman. Now, something to keep in mind is that the third volume of Aquaman is also called Thrones of Atlantis. I'll show you that here. So let's pan out from the Justice League issues. And here, we'll see the third volume. Oh, way too close. The third volume of Aquaman there, also Throne of Atlantis. Same name, different issues involved. Please don't get confused by it. So for now, we're going to carry on just looking at the Justice League issues. We'll cover the Aquaman ones in video 6.1. The important thing to know here is that you can read either one of these volumes in isolation. You don't need to read the Aquaman trade because the essential issues are collected here and vice versa. Now, as this is what I call a tie-in and not a crossover book, DC never released a single event volume that collected everything you might need for this. As such, if you're familiar with my channel, you'll know that I didn't want two collections on my shelf with the same name and overlapping issues. So I got them combined into one custom hardcover that combined all the issues in perfect reading order and removed any duplicate pages. I'll put a link in that video in the description below. So that's volume 3, Throne of Atlantis. Moving swiftly on, the next volume we're looking at is volume 4, The Grid. Now this continues the overarching story and is well worth reading. However, if you're reading this as a trade collection, be aware that The Grid contains issues 18 to 20 and then 22 to 23. I would only recommend reading up to and including issue 20 and then stopping before you ruin things for yourself. Now you're probably wondering why I say that and where the hell issue 21 is. Well, this is where things get complicated, but don't worry, I'm going to talk you through it. Now at this point, and I know this may sound odd, what you need to do is go away and read Shazam, which you can see up here. It's this orange circle with the Shazam picture sort of jumping through the black and white. Shazam's an odd one. DC never released any single issues that are actually titled Shazam during the entire New 52 era. Instead, this story was published as a series of backups in Justice League single issues 7 to 11, and then 14 to 16, and then 18 to 20, and then with 2 full issues dedicated to Shazam released within Justice League that replaced the usual content for a month apiece. One was Justice League 0, as part of Zero Month. The second and final Shazam issue was actually Justice League 21, which is why it wasn't included down here in the Grid issue. Anyway, timing wise, this is the best point to read Shazam in terms of the overall narrative. Trust me. And remember, don't read the last 2 issues in the Grid yet. So now things unfortunately get a little bit more complicated. This is our first crossover event. The next thing to read is the standalone crossover event book, Trinity War. Remember, this is a crossover, not a tie-in. In other words, there's a dedicated book for it you can buy. This book here, Trinity War, collects Justice League's issues 22 to 23, as well as issues 22 to 23 from Justice League Dark, and issues 6 to 7 from Justice League of America. Yep, as I mentioned, there is some double dipping here if you're reading in trade collections instead of in single issues. So obviously a couple of the issues here overlap with Volume 4 The Grid. The best thing to do is to read Volume 4 The Grid up to issue 20 and then move over to Trinity War, which ends with a stunning denouement in Justice League issue 23. If you get the event book itself, it also contains several other issues from several other lines on the way, including Constantine, issue 5, Phantom Stranger 11, and Trinity of Sin Pandora issues 1 to 3. Those are all series we'll discuss in later videos, but the reading order is here on screen. Please feel free to pause it if you want to look at that in more detail. Now, I'm aware that this approach renders reading part of the Grid volume superfluous, and you'll be double dipping if you pick up the Trinity War, but that's the way of it, I'm afraid. Now, this is an important point. If you don't want to read Trinity War, you can just read the Grid as a complete volume instead, meaning you can read all the issues here in this volume, the Grid. It will make sense, but it will be a bit confusing and you might find it a little bit disorientating, but ultimately it's enough that you can follow. Having said that, Trinity War is overall a little bit disappointing, but it's essential to read it and at least be familiar with it in order to set you up for the next event, which is Forever Evil. Now, this collector's edition collects the maxi series Forever Evil issues 1 to 7. It's a phenomenally well written and well drawn event that has repercussions across the entire New 52. You absolutely need to read it. As usual, I'll avoid spoilers as best I can. However, some things for you to note. It's at this point in the New 52, so round about issue 23, that each ongoing series gets a villain issue. This is normally decimalised, so 23.1 for example, and has the normal hero's name very dramatically scratched out on the cover, as you can see, replaced with a villain's name. In some cases, such as Action Comics for example, there were multiple villain issues that were numbered as 23.1, 23.2, 23.3, and even up to 23.4. This was called DC Villains Month and is not to be confused with the 2019 DC event Year of the Villain. They have nothing to do with each other. Now, these villain issues were eventually collected in a single omnibus called the DC New 52 Villains Omnibus. It collects all 52 villain-centric issues and is in fact a great read. All the issues work as standalone issues without any understanding of Forever Evil, and I generally highly recommend the omnibus. Now, this is hopefully the part where you figured out by yourself that this event and the issues in it is what leads to the existence of what I referred to in my introduction video as the Forever Evil line. A red line that cuts across the entire reading map I've made and has an impact on every single line in the DC universe to some degree. You can see it here. There is Forever Evil, and it just goes around cutting across. It's the first line of these two lines here. And the reason I put that line there is that it's always good to know in terms of your pacing, this is where the events of Forever Evil, which are massive and affect the entire world, take place in your reading order. So, zooming back into Justice League, where does that put us? Well, we've read Trinity War, we've moved on to Forever Evil. We can stop here and read the Villains Omnibus, but it's not essential reading to understand what's going on next. I'd recommend reading it at your leisure at some point whenever you have several hours to spare. So with no further ado, we now move on to Volume 5. Oh, but wait. Look, if I pan out on the map now, you'll see around it, surrounding it like a cage, are these 4 other issues. Satellite spin-off issues that happen at the same time of Forever Evil and are linked to it. So let's look at these one at a time and see exactly what is involved in them. So I will start with this one in the top right, which is Forever Evil Argus. It's a 6-issue miniseries. It's okay, but it's non-essential. Then we go down to Forever Evil Arkham War, because Batman's a license to print money, right? This contains a 6-issue Arkham War miniseries, as well as the Batman 23.1 Joker Villains issue, not the strongest issue, and ends with the Batman vs. Bane one-shot. Yeah, I'm aware this all sounds very exciting, but it's not. Again, it's okay, but it's non-essential. Next, we have Blight. This is an odd one out of these spin-offs. It's actually not a self-contained Forever Evil miniseries like the others are. Instead, it's a huge 18-issue crossover that contains issues from the ongoing comics of Justice League Dark, Constantine, Trinity of Sin Pandora, and Phantom Stranger. I'll throw up the reading order on screen here. Feel free to pause and write it down. It's a very mystic-focused, magic-heavy crossover that I personally found very dull. Having said that, I'm generally not a fan of anything magical related in my comics, so I'm irrationally prejudiced here. If magic is your thing, then this may well be worth checking out. And then finally, here we have Forever Evil Rogues Rebellion. Again, it's a 6-issue miniseries, and it throws in Flash 23.1. Basically, it's pretty forgettable. So that as a whole is Forever Evil. Not very straightforward, as you can see. It starts in Volume 4, The Grid, which overlaps with 2 issues as it moves to Trinity War, and then onto the Forever Evil maxi series that itself has 4 spin-offs, before moving back into the trade collections for Justice League. I guess there are 2 questions here to resolve before moving on. Firstly, how important is Trinity War? Well, to be honest, you could probably limp through on just reading Volume 4 The Grid and then going into Forever Evil. But the Trinity War collection adds valuable context here. Having said that, you don't need to have been reading the various other Justice League lines, so Justice League Dark or Justice League of America, to make head or tails of Trinity War, but it's up to you. I guess it just comes down to your personal tolerance and preference, and where you fall on the Type P or Type J spectrum. The second question is whether you should wait for the inevitable Forever Evil omnibus before buying any of these. My personal answer is an unequivocal, God no, please don't do that. All the spin-off series are garbage, at least in my opinion, and the only stuff worth reading is already out in an omnibus, to wit, the DC Villains Month issues. So, with that said, with that quick overview here, and again, you can see kind of this messy middle area of the series here. Hopefully those pictures of the covers of the trade collections have helped. With that done, let's move back into the normal Justice League trade collections. And to that end, let's have a look here at Volume 5, comes straight after Forever Evil, called Forever Heroes. This contains issues 24 to 29 and actually overlaps thoroughly with the timeline of events in Forever Evil, but just try to relax. Like I've said many times, a comprehensive read-through like this will require you to relax a little bit and become more of a casual Type J reader, not a Type P obsessive detailed reader. And anyway, you've got to read them in some order, right? After Volume 5, you then got Volume 6, which is this one here, which is called The Injustice League. It contains issues 30 to 39 and follows on from the events of Forever Evil, continuing the overarching story. At this point, I should probably highlight that we are coming up to the Convergence line, which is this red line here. There are 3 Justice League volumes collected after this, but they will have the red spine format that I discussed in the introduction video. Remember, don't get confused by that. So, the first Justice League volume after the Convergence line event, which we'll be discussing in a later video, is Volume 7, Darkseid War 1. So let's have a look at that. There you are, that's what it looks like. It's a great volume, contains issues 40 to 44. The next one is an easy source of confusion. You need to track down this trade collection. This one doesn't even actually have a number. It doesn't have anything on the spine and doesn't even in fact contain any Justice League issues. Instead, this volume is just called Power of the Gods, and it contains 6 one-shots. These are all called Justice League Darkseid War and then have the protagonist name. So, for example, it contains Justice League Darkseid War Batman and Justice League Darkseid War Flash, and so on. However, it's pretty compulsory reading, and this is the point that you read it, after Volume 7 Darkseid War 1. Having read that, I would then strongly recommend you eventually end up here at the very edge of my map with Volume 8 Darkseid War 2, which contains issues 45 to 50 and the Darkseid War special. It's important to note here that issues 51 and 52 are not collected here. Don't worry about that, you don't really need to read them, and they're collected elsewhere in Teen Titans and a Rebirth volume respectively. They'll be mentioned in later videos. So, that takes us through one of the shining jewels of the New 52 universe, Justice League. Now, I'm just going to pan out here and let you guys have a little bit of a look at the whole series again. And you'll see there, it's that middle thread on the right hand side of the map, from there to there. In closing, I am going to point out that collecting Justice League in a consistent format is an absolute nightmare for a collector. Of course, as a standard for the New 52, these are all available in trade paperback and regular side hardcovers. That's brilliant. However, as I mentioned, the first 2 volumes are also available in an absolute format, but none of the others are. And whilst almost everything is available in trade paperbacks and regular size hardcovers, the 4 Forever Evil spin-offs are all available as trade paperbacks only. And then the final 3 volumes, The Darkseid War, is available as an omnibus. Like, what the hell, DC? As I mentioned before, and will no doubt mention again, for lots of reasons, I actually believe that collecting the New 52 and the regular sized hardcovers is the optimal way to collect comics from this era. Of course, please feel free to make up your own mind. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, please like, comment, subscribe and share more widely. I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on the New 52 and on this series of videos as it progresses. Is it helpful? Am I being clear enough? Let me know in the comments below or tweet me at @IamThomasJudge. And as always, these videos are only possible thanks to supporting this channel by heading over to Amazon.com and picking up the first episode of my prose novel No Gods or Kings, available for less than $1. It's a series of interviews from a future where superpowers are real, and the entire world has changed dramatically as a result. If you have Kindle Unlimited, the first volume is completely free anyway. For those of you that are interested in downloading this map and infographic I've created for this video, that's also available on my website nogodsorkings.com, which is in the description below. So whilst you're there, why not pick up the first book and support the channel. Until next time, stay classy.